Hello dear friends. Tung confessed to Tu Diep that he will love her. Can James win her back? After breaking up with James, Tu Diep tries to return to normal life. But her heart is still full of unhealed wounds. Tung is always silently by her side. Finally cannot hide my feelings anymore. One sunset afternoon, Tu Diep sat quietly by the riverbank, where she often goes to find peace of mind. Tung came carrying a bouquet of bright sunflowers. Tu Diep, I know you're in pain, Tung said softly. But I don't want to see you like that anymore. Tu Diep looked at Tung in surprise. Tung gathered all his courage and took another step forward. I have loved you Tu Diep for a long time. I don't want to be just a friend to comfort you anymore. Give me a chance to take care of you, being the person that makes me happy. Tu Diep was stunned. She cannot deny that Tung is a good person, always care and protect her. But her heart still cannot forget James. She bowed her head, her voice trembling slightly. I can't forget James, Tung. Tung smiled softly, but there was a bit of pain in his eyes. I know, but I'm willing to wait for you. Just try to open your heart. I believe I can make you happy. Tu Diep was silent. She didn't know how to answer. At a business party, James happened to hear the news from a friend. Do you know that Tung just confessed? Tu Diep, it seems she is also considering. James's heart was shaken. He couldn't believe what he just heard. He fought to keep his love. But now another man has a chance next to her. Star. Unable to sit still, James immediately drove to find a Tu Diep. James found Tu Diep in the small garden behind the house. When she saw him, she was surprised but tried to stay calm. Are you thinking of accepting Tung's feelings? James asked directly, his voice full of emotion. Tu Diep bowed his head. He's a good man, he loves me truly. What about you, do you love him? Tu Diep is silent. She knew the answer in her heart, but she didn't want to hurt him. James moved closer and took her hand. Tu Diep, do not let the past and other people's words decide our love. I can accept him, but does my heart really belong to him? Tu Diep's tears fell silently. She realized that no matter how good Tung was, no matter how sincere he is, then the only person she loves is still James. She looked up at James and said with a choked voice, James, I never stopped loving you. James hugged her tightly. Then don't leave me anymore. Tu Diep nodded, tears mixed with a happy smile. In the end, fate still sides with true love. Tung quietly left when he knew Tu Diep's decision. Even though it hurts, I still wish her well, because he understands that love cannot be forced. James and Tu Diep are back together again. This time, they won't let anyone or anything separate them. Fate tested them, but in the end, true love still wins. True love, but the test is not over yet. James and Tu Diep got back together after many storms. But is everything really smooth sailing? James' father was furious when he heard the news of the two reuniting. He came to see his son with cold eyes. Why did you get back with that girl? Have you forgotten who you are? A CEO on heir to a prestigious family. She's just a poor girl selling vegetables in the market. James clenched his fists and looked steadily at his father. I don't care if she is rich or poor. What I care is I love her. His father slammed the table. So if I choose her, then don't expect any help from this family. James smiled faintly. Because I have never needed to rely on anyone but myself. After knowing that James disobeyed his father because of him, Tu Diep felt extremely pressured. She didn't want to be the reason he lost his family. Lose one's position. She thought a lot. One evening she asked James out for a meeting. James, I'm scared. I don't want you to have to sacrifice so many things. James hugged her tightly. I just need you, Tu Diep. Nothing is more important than you two. Tu Diep shed tears but was still worried. Is this love strong enough to overcome it all? Even though Tu Diep chose James, but Tung still silently followed her. He knew her love for James was deep. But he also knows that James' family will be a big obstacle. One afternoon Tung met James's father. I can help you separate them. The old man's eyes flashed with coldness. We are listening. Will Tung really give up his love? Or will you use another way to get Tu Diep? James and the Tu Diep can fight to the end. Or will fate once again separate them? Love threatened plot to separate. After Tu Diep and James got back together, the storm seemed to have subsided. But it was actually just a calm before the storm. The conspiracy of Father James and Tung. Tung sat opposite James's father in the luxurious tea room. I love Tu Diep sincerely listened to Tung speak slowly. Determined eyes. But I know as long as James is with her, I will not have a chance. Father James took a thoughtful sip of tea. People. I don't want that girl to step into my family either. If you have a way to keep them apart forever, I am ready to help you. Tung clenched his fist. A plan slowly formed in his mind. Just a few days later on business forums, spread the rumor that James is about to marry a rich girl, daughter of a large corporation, to save the company. Tu Diep was shocked to hear the news. She couldn't believe James would betray her. But when I saw the pictures of James going with a beautiful girl, coming out of the luxury hotel, her heart was broken. The phone rang and it was Tung. Tu Diep, have you seen the news? His voice was full of sorrow. I know you love James. But are you sure he loves you the same? Tu Diep clenched the phone tightly, tears falling down her cheeks. The truth is that James was forced by his father. Met that lady for a business deal. But he did not expect that. That meeting turned into a scandal. James angrily went to his father. What had his father done? His father calmly replied, people are just helping you have a worthy future. I think, what can a poor girl like Tu Diep do for me? Why can't love sustain you for life, James? I don't need an arranged marriage. groaning with red eyes. "Then you will lose everything," his father said coldly. Tu Diep decided to leave. Tu Diep sat alone in the small room. Look at the phone. But didn't know whether to call James or not. Finally she texted, "James, let's stop. I'm not strong enough to fight everything anymore." James received the message with a sinking heart. He rushed to her house immediately. Tu Diep listened to me. But the door was closed. She neither opened the door nor responded. Tears falling, did he really lose her? Tung came to the deep on a rainy day. Tung came to the Tu Diep. "Don't be sad anymore. I will be with you whether you choose me or not." Tu Diep looked at Tung, her heart full of hurt. Can she really forget James and accept someone new? But she didn't know that James is still fighting silently to bring her back to him. Can James turn things around and win back your love? Tu Diep has enough faith to come back. Or will she choose a peaceful life with Tung? Love is tested. James does not give up. The days after Tu Diep said goodbye, James was like a lost soul. He no longer has the mind to work. No longer smile brightly like before. He drinks more, but the more I drink, the deeper the pain. Why did you leave me, Tu Diep? Why? James knew this was not simply his decision. There's a hand behind everything that manipulates everything. I can't let it end like this. James investigates the truth. James began searching for clues about the false rumors between you and Miss Thinkham. And then he discovered Tung was the one behind it. Set it all up, Tung. James gritted his teeth and his eyes were bloodshot. Do you think you can get to deep by doing that? Unable to wait any longer, James immediately went to find Tu Diep. Fateful encounter. Tu Diep sat quietly in the small room. She tried to forget James. Try to convince yourself that breaking up was the right decision. But every night when I closed my eyes, James's image still appeared in her mind. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. It's James. He stood there with his eyes full of pain, but still determined. Tu Diep, do you really have to push me away like that? She turned away, not daring to face James. You go away. It's over. Not over yet. I know who is behind it all. Do you really want to believe those rumors? Tu Diep was surprised what he said. James stepped forward, put a document in her hand. Evidence that Tung manipulated the rumor. Used his father to separate them. Tu Diep was stunned and tears fell. I don't blame you, but I won't let anyone destroy it. Our love. I will do everything to protect you. Her heart trembled. She suspected James had pushed him away, while he kept fighting to keep her. But is it too late? confrontation between James and Tung. James came to Tung. "Do you have anything else to say?" James asked coldly. Tung never wavered. "I only want the best for her. Can you give her a peaceful life or just a storm?" James smiled faintly. "Do you think forcing her away from me is the best thing for her? Do you know how many nights she cried?" Tung was silent, his eyes dark. "I know I was wrong, but I don't want to give up. As long as she still loves me, I won't let you take her away from me," James asserted firmly. Tu Diep listens to her heart. Tu Diep sat alone, remembering everything that had happened. James has always been by her side, protecting her no matter what. Meanwhile, Tung used the wrong way to get her. Finally, she got the answer. That evening, she stood in front of James's gate, heart pounding. The door opened and James was surprised to see her. Tu Diep looked deep into his eyes and said softly, "I'm sorry, James. I still love you." James was silent for a few seconds, then pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly, as if afraid she would disappear again. Tears fell from both of them, but this time it was because of happiness. A new beginning despite many difficulties ahead. But they know that just holding hands, they can overcome all this. Love has been tested through so much pain, but in the end they still got back together. Is this a happy ending? Or are there still challenges ahead? Thank you for watching the video. Wish you good health. Please subscribe to the channel to see the next developments of the story. Thank you for watching the video. Wish you good health. Please subscribe to the channel to see the next developments of the story.